could be over sooner than you think. The Trump and Kim Jong-un summit might have ended with failure, but trade war with China could be over sooner than you think. Ed Blakely is a former Washington insider now living in Sydney, Australia. My name is Sean Britton from the radio station 2SER. Find us on iTunes, Whooshka, Facebook and Twitter at US of Ed. We've seen fallout from the North Korea summit all week. Thankfully, we're not talking nuclear fallout. I've seen 100 think pieces on this one. Where are we now?
Well, where we are is where you might anticipate we are. Trump blew it. And this is consequential because it means the U.S. isn't going to get another chance. And now we're faced with a situation where the U.S. is really on the outside and of a very important strategic alliance. But it's even worse than that. We're on the outside with Iran. So the U.S. is not the peacemaker anymore. We're the warmonger. And I think the world is seeing it, and many of the American people are seeing it. Trump's belligerence is hurting the whole world. And he is too distracted now to do anything. He's way too distracted. He has all these investigations going. The House is very serious, as you know, very serious. And those investigations are crippling him. And then you've got the Southern District, which is after his family. So as I said a long time ago, what Mueller's about is not about Trump, but everything around him.
As you say, even at the time of the North Korea summit, Michael Cohen testifying was blamed as one of the reasons Trump might be a little bit distracted.
Well, he didn't even look at the documents he had to go in that summit. He was so distracted that he spent all of his time watching television. And so when he came into the meetings, he didn't have anything to say. And clearly, this is a little bit different. Usually, the diplomats would work out the agreement in the background. In this case, they had points to discuss to see which way he would go, and then things to put on the table. He could not concentrate enough to read those points. And he's the only one in the room, other than the interpreters. So a bad situation got very bad.
To the border crisis, I don't know, Ed, maybe we are seeing a crisis here. Reports this week that records are being broken. Over 76,000 migrants reportedly crossing into the states through the southern border in February. This is an 11-year high. I must admit, I'm amazed the rhetoric isn't scaring more of them off. What's your thoughts?
Well, I think there are a couple of things here. One of them, a lot of people have been coming across the border from Mexico, and they've been doing it for years on very thin identity cards. And clearly the border agents know them, they let them through. But now they're under pressure to deal with them. So let's say that's 25 or 30,000 people. And you add to the usual mix that are coming through, it goes up. But really, 76,000, 75,000, I'm not sure. Are these people seeking asylum? I don't think so. I think these are people who are usually coming across under some fake identities, and now they're being picked up.
If not a wall, what's going to solve this one?
An act of Congress that says who can come in and who can't come in, and under what circumstances, and where they have to come from. The best thing the U.S. has done in the past is say you have to come to a U.S. embassy before you approach the U.S. border for a crossing. That would mean in Mexico. It might mean somewhere in South America, wherever. But you cannot just come up the border and present yourself. That's very much sounds like Australia, doesn't it? And I think that policy worked in the past. But the other side of that policy was a lenient 1 and 2 year visa program for workers. And I think if they go back to something like that, it'll work.
Trade war with China. White House economic advisors claiming a deal could be reached which would see China increase its purchases of U.S. products by $1.2 trillion. Has the trade war been won, lost, or come to a draw, Ed?
Well, that's all speculation and rhetoric. And the Chinese are not going to agree to that with their economy slowing down unless they get something in exchange. And I suspect what they really want is American know-how, particularly in the aircraft sector, where they're trying to build aircraft, including fighter aircraft. So there's going to be a trade-off here. China's not into volume anymore. $1 trillion here or there isn't going to really help them. What will help them is becoming more technologically sophisticated, which they have to do. So trade wars never help anyone. And this trade war has only done damage to U.S. farmers, done damage to U.S. firms, done damage to U.S. Manufacturing. So even if their $1 trillion deal is done, there'll be another $1 trillion we don't see. The Chinese are pretty smart.
And indeed, on that point, it's been revealed this morning that the US has posted a record trade deficit in goods despite Trump's America First policies, rhetoric. Not good news for the master of the deal, Ed.
No, it isn't if you look at it in that simplistic way. But the firms that we're buying things from are called Apple. They're called IBM. They're called HP. The manufactured good is coming from China, but the IP and the money is all made in the United States. So this trade deficit, the way it's been calculated, is not accurate anymore. We should only calculate goods that originate from a country that are under the patent protection of that country and where the deal is banked in that country. If we did, the U.S. deficit would fall dramatically.
And just on this as well, the Trump administration will be stripping India of special tariff status after they failed to convince India to lower their own trade barriers over the past year. So we're clearly not past seeing tariffs being wielded as a weapon by the Trump administration.
Well, it's not just by the Trump administration. Remember, Obama did the same thing. When people weren't paying fair, he said, we'll go back to the old way. And I think we will go back the old way. India's in a very difficult position. Are they a first world country or a third world country? They're a bit of both. And the goods they want to trade are first world goods, not third world goods. If there are third world goods like rice and things, Americans wouldn't be bothered because we don't buy their rice. But they're first world goods. If you notice, tunnels here are being done by India. India is selling automobiles in Indonesia and the United States. So the trade that the objection is to is the first world goods trade. And the only way to beat that is to make better goods. You can't beat it by just shutting it down or shutting it out. The U.S. is really on a technological decline, and that is scary because how the U.S. made it before was higher and higher technology.
Speaking of deficits, the federal budget deficit is way, way up. Treasury figures showing $310 billion, up from $176 billion a year ago. This is all being driven by Republican tax cuts and government spending. How does this fall into line with claims they were going to get rid of the deficit entirely?
Do you believe in the tooth fairy? This is all smoke with no mirror. No one believes this at all. And the shoe has got to drop. The U.S. will have to devalue its currency to pay this debt. That will have ramifications all over the world. The Chinese are doing the same thing, softly, softly, softly. They announced today a 6% increase in their GDP, which probably means a 4%. So China's slowing down. They have big debts. The Chinese debt is almost the same as the United States. You just can't spread that paper around the world anymore. Nobody's going to buy it. And the only way to handle it is to do some fiscally very difficult things that will hurt the United States and be big time hurt for the world.
When America sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold.
Well, I think this is pneumonia we're talking about.
The House Judiciary Committee has launched a massive investigation this week, kind of a do-it-yourself Mueller investigation in case the Mueller investigation doesn't get made public. Document requests sent to 81 people and entities linked to Trump's businesses and political dealings, and of course being rebuffed by the White House. So what's going on?
Well, clearly, the White House is tired of this. They've presented some or all that evidence in the past. But now, when you get a rat in a corner, he does strike back. And that's what's happening. The administration feels cornered here and beaten up on. And I guess you could be sympathetic to that because they've gone through all this with Mueller. Now they're going back through it with the House Judiciary Committee. I would anticipate they will meet some sort of deal here, but not very much on the Trump side. It'll be his aides and others who don't have the insulation of presidential privilege.
And we've been looking ahead to 2020 every once in a while. Hillary Clinton has confirmed she won't be running in 2020 this week.
Really?
Yeah.
What a surprise.
Look, no offense to the former Secretary of State, but I think a lot of people, well, aren't surprised and probably
delighted.
A little bit relieved.
But they'd be delighted if Bernie would give it up too.
Well, this is also a case, I'm afraid. She continues, though, to be a lightning rod figure. I mean, she asked this week, Trump, why are you so obsessed with me? Do you think her influence is still going to be felt on the next presidential election?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the Republicans will bring her up all the time, saying that she got off free, our guy was beaten up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So she's a foil. She's not a threat, but a foil. And the believers need somebody like this. You know, they need the Antichrist. And she should keep her mouth shut.
And it is International Women's Day this week. So before we go, I thought we might talk about some of the new female faces in the US Congress at the moment, following, of course, the midterms late last year. A record number, of course, elected at those midterms, Ed.
Yes, a record number elected, but they are a diverse group. They are not the typical white woman. We have Native Americans, 2 of them. That's the largest number of Native Americans in the Congress, I think, since, David Boone in the 1850s. So this is really a big, big change.
Deb Haaland and Sharice Davids, of course, the 2 Native American identifying women. And Davids, of course, extra points, identifies openly as a lesbian.
Yeah. I think this is going to be common currency. The Republicans are going to have a hard time with this, but they're going to have to put up some people who are similarly situated, or they won't be believable. And they will, for the very first time, I'm sensing the youth vote is going to make a difference. And if you're not with the right rhetoric and the right causes, you're not going to make it. And I think the Democrats are finding their way there.
Just on diversity point as well, in terms of diversity, Ilhan Omar, I mean, talk about your lightning rods like Hillary Clinton. She's certainly a lightning rod this week. She and Rashida Tlaib are the first woman Muslim members of Congress in U.S. history.
Yes, and I can't say the first one's name, but she is a lightning rod. She said some things that are very ungentle person-like, but she's carrying a heavy load in her heart. I'm not forgiving her. I'm just explaining what she's doing and is unable to contain it. But at some point, you have to realize she's representing a lot of other people with heavy hearts. And they feel, much like the Trump supporters, no rod can be spared. They are angry people. So we have an angry left, and she represents that.
And, of course, the youth vote you mentioned there, perhaps the angry left as well. I don't think we can discuss women in Congress or women in politics at all without mentioning Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, making, obviously, we've discussed before, a huge splash at the moment, Ed.
Yes, she is. And her Green New Deal is going to happen. I feel confident about that because it'll really be masked by the need for American infrastructure. And there's been talk of an infrastructure bank since Clinton, and it hasn't happened. And this infrastructure is now really critical. The fires that were just in California, infrastructure problem. The snow and what happened in those snowstorms, infrastructure problems. The streets in California, where I was recently in Hollywood, were horrible. So freeways, all kinds of things have been neglected. So I think that Green New Deal will look an awful like the same New Deal my father had in the Depression. and there will be a recession. So the combination will bring about something. The next president has an opportunity or a challenge, depending on how you're looking at it.
US of Ed is produced in the studios of 2SER in Sydney. Help support the work we do by going to 2ser.com/support. Ed and I'll be back next week to talk the latest in US news and politics. Subscribe on iTunes and Whooshka to stay up to date, and show us some love on Facebook and Twitter at US of Ed.